A girl tells Mira that she is now the heroine in the world of an Otome game. Mira sits on a bed and reacts with confusion. The setting is a tiny village in the kingdom of Stummel. Kafir tells Mira to take a bowl of food to table 5. Mira responds to her dad while holding a tray. She states that her name is Mira and that she runs the village tavern, the Stardust Inn, with her dad. She carries a bowl of food across the room and serves it to a customer. She states that she is 8 years old and helps serve in the inn's dining hall. Spica enters the doorway and greets Mira, saying she arrived as agreed. Holding a tray, Mira looks back and says Spica's name. Spica asks Mira if she will finish soon. Mira narrates that Spica is Myra's oldest friend and lives at the church orphanage. Kafir tells Mira she can go play and mentions he will prepare for tomorrow. Martha tells the girls not to be too rowdy, and Mira and Spica agree before going off to play. Sitting on a bed, Spica says today was fun, and Mira agrees. Spica asks Mira if she has learned anything from helping out, and Mira replies that she can fry eggs sunny side up. Mira states that she wants to become a chef at the inn like her dad, while Spica looks at her. Mira says that one day she'll get married, take over the inn, and live a quiet life in the village. Spica points out that Mira wants ordinary things, then chuckles to herself. She addresses Mira and tells her that she is now the heroine in the world of an Otome game. Spica states that she was a college student in her former life and reincarnated as the heroine of her favorite game, Ring of Stars. Sitting on the bed, Mira responds with confusion. Spica explains that when she turns 10, her count father will receive her, and she will join the nobility. Mira questions her friend about what she is talking about. Myra's friend states that the prince and other men will be captivated by her at first sight, and that she will eventually become queen. Mira feels that they are not having a proper conversation. Spica says she will not lose to any villainesses. Mira thinks about how Spica is heading toward becoming a failure heroine and getting ruined. Mira repeats the words failure heroine to herself while holding her head as it throbs. She holds her head among floating papers and asks what is happening. Silhouettes show a pastry chef decorating a cake, standing outside a shop and waving. Mira realizes that the pastry chef is herself. Mira recalls memories from her former life. She had a friend who loved Otome games set in other worlds. Later, Mira began reading the novel versions of those same games. A broken smartphone lies on the ground as Mira winces and holds her head. She tries to remember what happened after that. Spica twirls around and tells Mira she'll take her along as her maid because Mira is her special friend. She reaches out to Mira, asking what is wrong and noting that she looks pale. Mira breathes heavily while holding her head, thinking about Spica. Mira remarks to herself that Spica is stuck up and too frank with others, causing many people to dislike her. A group of children stands at a distance from Spica. Spica asks Mira if she is okay. Mira notes that Spica is kind and cares about her friends. Mira shouts that heroines with wild fantasies and memory cheats in Otome game novels always get ruined. Spica stands surprised by her reaction. Our girl warns Spica that being careless around the prince can lead to charges of lèse majesty and execution in the worst case. Spica raises her hands and asks Mira what terms like wrecked and lèse majesty mean. She asks Mira if she knows Otome games and has memories of a former life. Mira confirms that she just remembered her former life. Mira states that she does not know the game, Ring of Stars, but she has read many Otome game novels. Spica listens with a shocked reaction. Our girl explains that heroines who cling to the plot and fail to communicate end up with a bad ending. Spica reacts with alarm and says she does not want that. Mira tells Spica that she needs to share details about this game world, and Spica agrees. Spica is the protagonist, a girl who lost her mother to illness when she was young and grew up in an orphanage, but is also the secret child of a count. The count sends an attendant, and the game begins when Spica is summoned to the count's side. She is accepted as the count's child in the royal capital. At her new school, Spica meets several potential love interests, including a prince, a merchant's heir, the count's adopted son, and her stepbrother. She suffers bullying from villainesses and forms a relationship with her love interest. The villainess sits on the floor and is convicted in front of Spica and her love interest. Spica marries her love interest while being carried in his arms. Sitting on the bed, Spica tells Mira that this is how the game goes. Mira understands that Spica is the heroine of Ring of Stars and that she is an NPC appearing in the initial village. She thinks that she has heard of this story before, even though she has never played the game. She finds that her mind goes hazy when trying to remember, while Spica calls out her name. Mira apologizes for getting lost in thought and asks Spica if she was a Japanese student in her former life, which Spica confirms. Spica explains that she loved playing Otome games, but had an accident right after entering college. Mira says that she cannot remember her former Japanese life well, but estimates she was about 30 years old. Spica reacts in surprise, realizing Mira was older than her. Spica addresses Mira as Miss Mira, but Mira asks her to just call her Mira. Mira asks if the game has a reverse harem ending, and Spica confirms that she is aiming for it, prompting Mira to warn her that she'll get ruined. Spica clenches her fists and insists that a reverse harem is the ideal ending for an Otome game heroine, right as a stomach growl interrupts her. She blushes while looking down, and Mira looks over at her after hearing her stomach growl. Mira stands up from the bed and notes that it is midnight because they talked for so long, inviting Spica to have a snack. She asks Spica if she likes udon noodles, and Spica answers that she does. Mira invites Spica to come to the kitchen, and Spica asks if she is going to cook. As they walk down the stairs, Mira mentions that she thinks she was a pastry chef in her former life, but since she liked all cooking styles, she can cook general food as well. Spica responds that it is cool. Mira states that this medieval European world has udon, soy sauce, miso, and green tea because it is a Japanese Otome game. She explains that these items have been available for about 20 years due to the idea of the second prince, who is known for being like a cherub. Mira nods and states that she has to be grateful for Japanese ingredients. Our heroine walks over to the kitchen counter and strikes stones together over the fireplace hearth. A hand lifts a cloth covering a stacked wooden box to take out a portion of udon noodles. Mira points to herself and says that she has everything, including the soup her dad made, as eggs, bottles, flour, and noodles rest on the table. She then steps up on a low bench, ties her apron strings, and holds up 2 small cooking pots in both hands. She boils the udon in one pot, while seasoning the soup with soy sauce in another. Mira decides to make tenkatsu. She mixes flour, vinegar, and water, then spoons the batter into hot oil. Then she arranges the udon in a bowl and sprinkles green onions on top, completing the tenkatsu udon. Spica notes the presence of tenkatsu, while Mira mentions that the ingredients make it closer to pho. Spica slurps the noodles. She says that the food is perfect while eating alongside Mira. Mira chuckles and states that she is glad. Spica drops onto the bed, stating that she is full and sleepy. Mira holds a hairbrush and calls out to her. Spica rolls over and says that Mira has always been the only one who looks into her eyes while speaking, then falls asleep. Mira listens while holding the hairbrush. Mira looks at Spica and says goodnight. She lies down beside her, thinking that Spica might end up ruined like a failure heroine, but that she wants to save her friend and make sure that does not happen. Kaffir bangs on the door and demands to know the meaning of this. Mira realizes that she forgot about the dirty dishes. Mira apologizes to her dad for cooking without asking. Kaffir points toward the bowls on the counter and says he does not care about that, but asks about the taste of the food. Kaffir notes that Mira used his soup as a base, but points out that it tastes completely different. Mira blinks in response. He grabs Mira by the shoulders and asks what the crunchy things are. Kaffir shakes Mira while calling her name and insisting that she tell him. Mira wobbles back and forth from the shaking. Mira laughs and calls her dad a cooking nerd to herself, then begins to explain things to him. Tenkatsu udon became part of the Stardust Inn's menu at lunchtime that day. A carriage travels down a road while Sane addresses Regulus. Sane states that they are almost there while Regulus rests his eyes inside the carriage. Regulus pulls back the curtain, looks outside at a building, and asks if this is their stop, to which Sane confirms. Then Regulus steps out of the carriage, adjusts his hood, and states that there is nothing much in this place while Sane stands beside him. Kaffir cooks at the counter. Spica carries a dish in the dining area. Sane and Regulus stand near the door inside the inn. Mira runs through the busy dining room while carrying dishes. Customers sit at tables throughout the inn. She holds a tray and places 2 bowls of udon on the table, along with bowls of toppings. She tells the customers thank you for waiting and presents their order. Sane and Regulus blink in surprise. Sane asks what the item on the table is. Mira explains that it is tenkatsu. She thinks to herself that he is surprised because they are likely the only place serving it. She explains that tenkatsu is a crunchy fried topping that becomes soft when soaked in soup, suggesting to add a few spoonfuls first. Sane questions if it is a topping. Sane says he will try it first and scoops tenkatsu into the udon bowl while Regulus swallows. Mira holds her tray and wonders if the 2 customers are brothers since she has never seen them before. Sane eats the food and says that it is delicious. Sane starts to call out to Regulus before changing his name to Leo, then switches his udon bowl with Regulus's bowl. Mira watches them and thinks that Sane switched the udon to check if it was not too hot, considering him an overprotective older brother. Someone calls for Mira, and she responds that she is coming as Sane and Regulus walk away. The scene transitions to the outside of the inn at night. Spica says the restaurant is doing great and tenkatsu sells well, thanking Mira for housing her. Mira thanks Spica for helping wait on the tables. Spica asks Mira if she wants her to keep explaining how the Otome game goes. Mira agrees. Then Spica explains that the heroine gets lost during her school enrollment ceremony. She states that a prince helps the heroine out. Spica explains that the heroine gives the prince homemade cookies as a thank you, and the 2 fall in love. Mira sighs while she listens. Mira asks if the prince is too much of a pushover. She asks what kind of prince eats cookies without testing for poison first. Spica replies that homemade cookies are traditional. Mira then questions if Spica can even bake cookies. Spica states that plot armor will take care of that, while Mira calls out her name. Mira grabs Spica and warns her that she will get wrecked if she thinks that way. Spica gasps. She nags Spica, repeating that she does not know if this world will turn out like the game. Spica reacts to the scolding. Mira explains that villainesses in novels are often reincarnated too and tells Spica to face reality and live a sound lifestyle. Spica lies on the bed, agrees, and her stomach growls. Mira realizes Spica's stomach growled. Spica looks up and asks Mira for something. Mira thinks to herself that at this rate, the heroine will only end up fat. Mira agrees to help only this once. Spica jumps on the bed. Spica looks at a bowl of kamatama udon with an onsen egg. Mira tells her it is an experiment and to dig in. Spica eats the udon and says it tastes good, noting that the egg is rich and runny and that it is great. Mira mentions she is still figuring out the stock while a dark silhouette watches them from the doorway. Mira turns around with noodles in her mouth as a shadowy figure holding a sword stands in the doorway. The figure notes that it was just the innkeeper's kids. Sane apologizes for startling them, explaining that he heard a noise downstairs. Mira asks if they were too noisy, and Sane clarifies that he got up on his own. Mira notices Sane's hand resting on the hilt of his sword. She panics internally, wondering if Sane thought they were burglars and feeling relieved he did not strike them. Sane bows and apologizes sincerely, waving off the issue as a loud stomach growl sounds nearby. Mira looks at Spica, but Spica shakes her hands and states it was not her since she already ate. Sane scratches his cheek and admits that the stomach growl was his. Mira asks if she should prepare something simple to eat. Sane blushes and tells her not to mind him as his stomach growls again. She tells Sane to take a seat and that she will be back in a minute. Sane agrees and sits down while Spica yawns in the background. Mira serves kamatama udon with an onsen egg. Sane notes that he has never seen udon served without soup before. She tells Sane to try it with a soft-boiled egg. Sane says very well and takes a bite of the noodles. He reacts in shock as Mira stands behind him. He slurps the noodles and states that the rich yolk coats the udon and makes it delicious. Mira observes his enthusiasm while holding her tray. He wipes his mouth and thanks Mira, stating that the meal was a feast. Mira asks if he liked it while Spica nods silently. Sane asks for the cost of the meal. Mira waves her hands and replies that she cannot charge because it was an experiment, but Sane notes that the ingredients cost money. Mira points her finger and says she would be glad if he stays at the inn next time as well. Sane chuckles and says very well, noting to himself that she is not greedy. He mentions he is staying for 2 nights and offers help if needed, prompting Mira to ask if he is traveling with his brother. He questions the word brother, and Mira clarifies she means the person with him. Sane pauses, then smiles and confirms that he is traveling with his brother. Mira thinks to herself that Sane seemed to hesitate when answering. A thud sounds nearby. Spica holds her head in pain and apologizes, stating that she fell asleep. Mira checks on Spica's forehead and suggests cleaning up before returning to bed. Sane offers to help clear the dishes. He carries trays with cups while Mira looks on in surprise. He carries a tray and asks if he should place it over here. Mira confirms and tells Spica to wait just a minute. Sane washes dishes while Mira puts them away. She then opens the door, addresses Spica, and apologizes for being late. Sane stands right behind her. Spica sleeps with her head resting on the table. Mira looks over at her. She asks Sane for help with Spica. He offers to carry Spica to her room. The scene transitions to the next evening outside the inn. Our protagonist, Mira, yawns and stretches while sitting at a table inside. She hums and thinks that everything is done, considering cooking tempura next time. Sane and Regulus enter the room and say good evening, asking if they are interrupting. Mira jumps in surprise, then greets them and says they are not interrupting at all. She asks how she may help, and Sane puts his arm around Regulus, stating that they are here with a request. Mira notes that the brother is here and offers to call her father if they have a request. Sane begins to explain otherwise while Regulus adjusts his hood. Regulus speaks up and states that he wants to taste the egg udon as well. Mira places her hand to her mouth, thinking that she has never heard his voice before, and asks if he means the egg udon dish she made yesterday. Sane explains that when he mentioned last night's supper, his brother Leo was curious and wanted to try it if it was on the menu. Mira realizes that he wants a taste of it. She apologizes and explains that they are currently out of eggs. Regulus is shocked. Sane apologizes for the unreasonable request and tells Leo to head back to their room. Regulus droops, and Mira notes to herself that he looks devastated. As Sane and Regulus walk toward the door, Regulus remains shocked, and Mira calls out for them to wait a second. Sane and Regulus turn back to listen. Mira states that they do not have eggs, but they have plenty of udon, promising to make something and bring it to them. Mira stands in the kitchen, looks forward, and decides to get to work while thinking of the stacked trays of udon noodles. Kafir holds a cooking pot and tells Mira that the soup will not be ready for a while. Mira holds a piece of bacon and answers that it is no problem. Bacon, a carrot, mushrooms, a bell pepper, a cabbage, and seasonings lie on the table as Mira thinks to herself that there's a recipe that does not call for soup. Mira chops the vegetables, coats a hot frying pan with sesame oil, fries bacon, and sizzles the vegetables. Kafir asks if she is making stir-fried noodles, and Mira confirms. Kafir states that he only ever thought of udon as a soup dish. Mira replies that the noodles are good stir-fried as well. She then adds the boiled noodles once the vegetables are cooked and gives them a quick stir. She then drizzles soy sauce around the edge of the hot pan. Mira presents her dish and says bon appetit to her special stir-fried udon noodles. Sane states that the noodles are stir-fried. Regulus notes that it smells like savory soy sauce. Sane says he will taste it first and takes a bite. He reacts in surprise. He addresses Leo and tells him that he has got to try this. Leo, holding his chopsticks, agrees. Leo hesitates, munches on the noodles, and reacts in surprise. He tells Sane that it tastes great, and Sane agrees that it is delicious. Mira holds her tray and watches them enjoy the food. Regulus pats his stomach and says he is full. Sane agrees and states that it tasted fantastic. Sane kneels before Mira and asks if she made the food. Mira holds her tray and confirms that she did. Sane compliments Mira as a fine chef and asks for her name. Our girl blushes and stammers out her name as Mira. Regulus places a hand on Sane's shoulder and repeats her name. Leo smiles and thanks Mira while she looks at him. Our boy states that he never had stir-fried udon before and calls it super delicious. Mira laughs and says she is glad he liked it. Mira tells Leo that she asked her dad and kamatama udon will be on the menu tomorrow evening. Leo raises his fists and states that he really wanted to try udon with egg. Our girl laughs while holding her tray, expressing that she is glad he liked her cooking and hopes he'll enjoy it tomorrow as well. Leo looks at her, seemingly lost in thought. Leo agrees to eat it tomorrow. The next day, Sane notes that they are lucky while Leo eats his udon. Mira says to herself that the two had their kamatama udon at last, as someone calls for her. Mira responds that she is coming as Sane and Leo leave the inn. The carriage travels forward. Sane says that concludes this inspection tour and asks Regulus how it was. Regulus pulls back his hood and says he thought time would be better spent studying with his elder brother. He recalls Mira smiling and saying she is glad he liked her cooking. He states that he realized how narrow-minded he was. Regulus sits back and says it was a good tour and that he'll go again. Mira knocks on the church door and greets Sister, saying she brought something from her mother. Sister welcomes Mira inside. She enters and calls out to Spica, saying she came to play. Spica greets Mira and mentions that she does not see her there often. Mira reaches up to a shelf of books and states that it should be around here, staring intently at the choices. Spica asks Mira if she came to study. Mira holds an open book and looks up. She confirms that she did, noting that the church has many books to read. Holding her book, Mira explains that she wants to learn about the lands and specialties of this world. She explains that cooking for a guest made her want to grow her cooking repertoire. Spica responds that she understands. Spica flips a page in her book and states that Mira was grown up even before her past life memories returned. Mira looks over at Spica while holding her open book. She asks Spica when her memories return. Spica closes her book and states that her memories returned about 3 years ago when her mother died. Mira looks back in surprise. Mira apologizes and says she should not have asked. Spica shakes her hands and replies that it is fine. Spica states that her mother's death came as a shock. A younger Spica holds hands with Sister near gravestones. She explains that the event triggered her memories of the game. Younger Spica looks down at her hands. Images show game screens displaying Spica, her father, and her future school life. Spica explains that believing her father would pick her up and that her school life would be happy kept her going through loneliness. Mira holds her book open and looks across the table at Spica. Mira notes that Spica never gave up hope. The village buildings and surrounding mountains are shown. Mira remarks that Spica hopes someone would rescue her from the village and change her lonely life. Mira thinks that Spica's faith in the Otome game kept her going. Spica smiles and says that after meeting Mira, she began to enjoy life and felt like she gained a big sister. Mira suggests that Spica can call her big sister, but Spica objects, saying they are the same age. Spica thanks Mira. The two girls laugh together. Mira agrees to keep studying, but both girls slump onto the table. Spica refuses to study further, and Mira realizes the books are only for children or religious texts. She suggests stopping the book study and asks Spica to share more memories about the game world instead. Spica claps her hands together and agrees. Our girl asks if the world has magic, noting she has never seen it. Spica replies that the game is mainly about romance. Mira then asks what kind of food was in the game. Spica started thinking. She explains that apart from cookies, there were sandwiches and cupcakes. Mira asks about the sea and seafood. Spica states that there is an event in a port town. Mira holds her cheeks and thinks about seafood in the port town. Spica sighs and asks Mira if she is curious about the love interests. Our protagonist states she is not interested in the love interests, but says she would want to talk to the second prince who thought of udon. Spica holds a cup while listening. Spica laughs and says Mira only thinks about food. Mira pouts her cheeks, raises her fists, and replies that Spica likes Otome games while she likes cooking and baking. Mira remembers that she began reading Isekai'd novels after a girl showed them to her. She wonders where that girl is and what she is doing now. Suddenly she reacts in surprise as someone calls her name. Spica holds a stack of books and says she thought Mira was sick because she did not respond. Mira apologizes and says she is fine. The outside of the church building is shown. Mira says her mother gave her bread for Spica and suggests making something with it. Spica suggests cleaning up quickly so they can eat together.
Mira presenza Isekai'd pan con tomate.
Sister, Spica, and 2 children react to the food. Sister asks Mira about the dish, noting that it looks enchanted. Mira explains that it is garlic and tomato spread on toast, flavored with salt and olive oil. Our sister states that the food looks divine, and Mira invites everyone to sit and eat. Mira, Spica, and the children sit at the table and eat the toasted bread with soup. Spica eats the toast and states that the tomato and garlic are a perfect match, adding that it is so good, she cannot stop eating. Mira thanks her. Spica states that Mira is a versatile chef. Mira responds that she is glad Spica thinks so. Spica hesitates while addressing Mira. Spica brings her hands together and asks Mira to teach her how to bake cookies. She clasps her hands and says she may give cookies to the prince one day. Mira looks over at her. Mira smirks and asks if Spica is the same girl who spoke about plot armor. Spica points at her and tells her not to smirk, adding that Mira previously mentioned getting wrecked. She raises her fist and says she will do her best to help and practice together. Spica agrees. The exterior of the church building is shown. Mira says she needs to go and thanks them for the books. Spica bids goodbye to Mira. She returns home and sees a basket filled with lemons. Myra's mother, Martha, mentions that a lot was delivered, while Myra's father, Kaffer, explains that the harvest festival is approaching and he wanted local produce on the menu. Myra's mother, Martha, offers lemons to Mira, telling her she can take some if she wants to make something. Mira holds lemons from the basket and thanks her. Myra's mother looks over while Spica ties her hair into a ponytail and ties an apron around her waist. Mira stands with her arms crossed and tells Spica to try to keep up. Spica salutes and says she is at her service, addressing Mira as her teacher. Our girl points out that sugar, flour, eggs, and butter are needed to make cookies, emphasizing that weighing everything is important. Spica writes down notes. Mira shows a glass jar and presents the main flavor ingredient. Spica holds a piece up and asks what it is. Mira explains that lemon peel is a local specialty dried fruit, describing it as sweet, tangy, and slightly bitter. Spica tries a piece. Spica weighs flour and sugar using a scale, then sifts the ingredients. Mira watches and tells her to sift gently. The recipe steps show mixing butter, sugar, and eggs, adding lemon peel and flour, shaping the dough into a cylinder, chilling it, slicing it, and baking it in an oven. Spica wears oven mitts and says it is time to take out the cookies. The pan reveals that the cookies are charred black. She holds the tray of charred cookies while tears drip down her face. Mira holds a tray of properly baked cookies and points out that there is no plot armor. Spica tells Mira not to rub it in. Spica says that Mira makes it look easy while holding the tray of charred cookies. Mira explains that confectionery takes getting used to and that the oven is temperamental. She mentions that it is just a matter of practice. Spica agrees while looking down at the burnt cookies. Spica raises her fist and states that she will master making cookies before leaving town. Mira holds up 2 fingers and suggests tasting them to learn their lesson. Spica reacts as she looks at the comparison between the good cookies and the burnt ones. Spica eats a burnt cookie, states that it tastes like defeat, and asks to try one of Myra's cookies. Kaffer opens the door and asks Mira and Spica to come for a second while Mira eats a cookie. She asks her dad what is going on. Kaffer explains that while it is good the inn is busy, they are short-staffed. Kaffer states that he hired help and introduces his new kitchen hand, telling him to say hello. Izara bows holding a sack while Mira and Spica look on. Izara winks, waves, and introduces himself. Mira introduces herself and Spica. He shakes Myra's hand, says it is a pleasure, and glances closely at her. Mira looks back in confusion. Izara tells them to leave all the heavy lifting to him. Spica waves and calls out to Mira as she says internally that 2 years passed after that. Mira and Spica carry baskets of produce near festival decorations. Mira says that they turned 10. Mira notes that this is the second harvest festival since her memories of her past life returned. Mira and Spica walk through the festival holding baskets. A man waves at Mira and greets her. A seated man holding a mug asks if the Stardust Inn will have a stall at the festival. Mira answers that they're about to set it up. Spica notes that the men are drinking already. Izara notices Mira and Spica arriving at the stall. Mira thanks Izara for setting up the shop and tells him to put the supplies in the back. Izara gives a thumbs up and says it is no problem. Mira wipes her forehead and thinks about her dad bringing the meat. Hands present a plate filled with freshly baked cookies to Mira. Spica asks if the color and gloss of the cookies look perfect. Mira tries one and says it looks good and tastes great. Spica clasps her hands together and asks if it is really good. Mira describes that Spica made quick progress after taking up baking. Mira notes that Spica dries her own lemon peel and helps with the orphanage accounts. Spica giggles and says her effort was worth it. Mira chuckles to herself while standing near baskets of lemons. She thinks back to when she warned Spica about getting wrecked. Then she hears someone calling her name. Izara states that the fire is ready. Mira notes that Izaru is a strong ex-wayfarer who has worked at the inn for 2 years. She adds that Izaru is like a big brother to them now. Mira thanks Izaru and says they can open the shop when the meat arrives. Izaru drools at the mention of meat. He states that today's dish is going to be amazing. Mira's new idea is skewered chicken. Mira thinks that she has never seen it in this land and that trying it out was a great idea. Spica calls Izaru's name. She points her finger and tells Izaru not to snack on the sly while working at the stall. Izaru responds that he would say much the same to Spica. Spica argues that Izaru always gets to try Mira's cooking first, while Izaru states that eating is part of his job. Mira asks them to calm down. Kafra arrives holding a crate of meat and asks if the others are ready. Mira calls out to her dad. Kafra states that he will be busy at the inn until the festival is over, so he needs them to run the stall. Spica raises her fists and tells Mr. Kafra that they've got it, adding that they will sell every last stick. Izaru cracks his knuckles and says they should give it their all. Mira announces that the Stardust stall is open for business, while Spica ties her hair ribbon and Izaru holds skewers. Izaru fans the grill and calls out to potential customers. Festival visitors notice a good smell coming from the stall. A customer notes the good smell and asks if this is the food. Izaru confirms it is skewered chicken and adds that it is perfect for eating while walking. A large crowd gathers at the stall. Izaru asks Mira for more meat, while Spica runs out to take orders. Customers eat the skewered chicken. One customer says they are lining up again. Izaru and Spica sit down and pant after working. Narration notes that 2 days' worth of meat sold in one afternoon, and the Stardust stall is all sold out. A closed sign hangs at the shop. Mira hands glasses of her lemon juice to Izaru and Spica. Izaru and Spica drink the lemon juice. Spica thanks Mira. Izaru states that it is refreshing and delicious. Izaru picks up the money box and says he will head back and take today's profits to Mr. Kaffer. Mira thanks him. Mira tells Spica to clean up and go back. Spica offers to help. Somebody shouts in surprise that they finished already. Leo pants and calls Sane's name, stating that is why he was in a hurry. Sane tells Leo to calm down. Mira wonders if they came to eat. Spica holds a basket, says she will take the stuff back, and tells Mira to talk to them. Mira agrees. She approaches Sane and Leo to apologize, explaining that they ran out of meat and closed up shop. Leo questions if they closed up shop. Leo looks gloomy and asks if they will be open tomorrow. Mira looks at him. Mira raises her hands and explains that all the meat ordered for the festival is sold out, so they have to take a break tomorrow. Leo reacts to the news in disbelief. Leo argues that he said they could not waste time at the rest area. Sane replies that they had to be fully prepared before leaving. Our boy complains that they came all this way to try the skewered chicken. Sane tells Leo to watch his language and says he understands his feelings. Mira notes that both of them are sweating, then realizes something. Mira offers a tray with 2 glasses of lemon juice, asking if they would like to try it instead. Leo grabs a glass and drinks it while Sane shouts his name. Leo says the drink is delicious, perfect for his thirst, and thanks Mira. Mira responds that he is welcome while looking confused. Sane greets Mira, stating that it has been a while. Leo says that they meet again, and asks how she has been. Mira recognizes them as the hungry brothers from before. Sane picks up the shop sign and asks if it needs to be taken back to the inn, noting that they interfered with packing up. Mira says she cannot ask a customer to do that. Sane states that they will stay at the inn tonight, so it is okay. Mira agrees to let him carry the sign. Leo calls Myra's name and extends his hand, offering to take the basket she is holding. She turns around in response. Sane whispers to Mira, asking if she will let Leo be a gentleman while carrying the sign behind them. Leo tells Sane to shut up. Leo shouts no in response to Sane's suggestion. An image of Mira giggling and saying yes please appears in his mind. Izaru opens the door to the Stardust Inn and addresses Mira. He freezes as he sees Mira, Sane, and Leo arriving together. Kafir welcomes Mira back and asks if she brought the sign back as well. Kafir states that they are almost ready for the thank you party and invites Sane and Leo to join since they helped. Mira agrees. Spica waves and calls Mira over to the table. Mira, Leo, and Sane look towards Spica. Spica asks Mira if those are the guys from the stall. Mira whispers that they have met the older brother before. Behind them, Sane suggests to Leo that they should put the bags down. Mira whispers that Sane tried her first kamatama udon with them. Spica looks at Sane and wonders where that happened, though she remembers the taste. Sane looks back in confusion. Spica glances at Sane while he smiles. Spica recalls that she had seen him somewhere. Then she adds that she does not know any cheerful young men and has never seen him. Martha calls Mira and Spica to lend a hand, and the girls agree. Martha serves food and tells everyone to eat up. She presents plates of skewered chicken and special beef barbecue with 3 dipping sauces. Sane and Leo react to the food served for inn guests. Everyone sits around the table eating dinner together. Sane notes the thin slices of meat, while Leo finds the salt and sauce delicious. Mira explains that thin meat is popular because guests can try many flavors. Spica and Izaru reach for the same piece of meat, resulting in Izaru taking it. Spica pats her stomach and says she is stuffed. Kafir carries dirty dishes away and mentions that there is still Myra's dessert, surprising Spica. Spica says she will clear up the table. Mira states that she will fetch the dessert from the cellar. Leo calls Myra's name and asks if there is anything he can lend a hand with. Mira notices crumbs on Leo's face and reaches into her pocket, pulling out a handkerchief. Mira says pardon me and wipes the crumbs off Leo's mouth. Leo blushes. Leo asks if she always does that kind of thing. Mira apologizes and explains that it is just a habit from dealing with kids at the orphanage. Leo mutters to himself that he guesses it is okay then. Mira calls out to him as guest, and Leo responds that his name is Leo. Mira looks ahead as Leo tells her to call him Leo. She addresses him as Master Leo. He asks her to just call him Leo. Mira agrees. Leo smiles and says that is better. Mira asks Leo to take a platter and come to the cellar with her. Leo agrees. She walks down the stairs and asks Leo if he has ever seen the sea while traveling with his brother. Leo looks at her in response. Leo holds a milk crepes cake, confirms he has seen the sea, and asks Mira if she wants to see it. Mira carries another milk crepes cake with lemon jam inside and explains what the dessert is. Mira says that she wants to see the sea and the capital, visit many places, and learn all kinds of delicious dishes. Leo smiles and notes that those are her motivations. Our girl asks if that is weird, and Leo replies that it is not. As they walk back carrying the cakes, Sane and Izaru wait by the doorway. Mira wonders what they are doing. Mira asks if something happened. Izaru stands with his arms crossed and calls Myra's name. Sane snatches the plate from Leo and tells Leo to come with him. Leo asks Sane what has gotten into him. Izaru guides Mira, telling her to come to the guest room now and promising to explain later. Mira looks at him in response. Sane pulls his hood up and tells Izaru that he will leave this to him. Izaru nods in response. Mira asks Izaru if something is wrong, stating that she can hear Spica and her dad talking in the other room. Izaro holds the cakes and states that a guest arrived for Spica. Our girl places her hand near her mouth and realizes what is happening. She recalls that they turned 10 this year. Kafir, Spica, and Martha speak with a man in a suit, while Leo watches from under his hood. Mira remarks that today is the day they part ways. Mira and Izaro stand together looking toward the door. Rain falls heavily on the building outside as Mira comforts Spica. She tells Spica to cheer up while Spica cries and stammers. Spica states that they might never see each other again. Mira explains that Count Kurt, Spica's father, sent a servant to take Spica to the capital immediately, but Kafir managed to get him to wait until morning. Mira suggests to Spica that they talk until morning while holding her on the bed. She points her finger up and offers to make French toast as a midnight snack for Spica. Spica cries and repeats the words French toast. Mira notes that they did not eat the milk crepes for dessert and asks Spica if she wants to eat some, to which Spica agrees. Our girl opens the door, saying she will go get it, and Spica thanks her. Mira closes the door and walks down the stairs, thinking about how Spica was crying even though she had been waiting for her father to come for her. Mira holds her hand to her chest and thinks that Spica's tears were probably tears of loneliness. Our girl reaches for a teacup next to the milk crepes cake and wonders if Spica liked being with the village folk, noting that they are different from the game. Mira holds a cake server and thinks she would be happy if Spica felt that way. Mira thinks about how Sane and Leo probably did not get any dessert as Sane stands in the hallway wearing his hood. Leo collapses onto the bed and asks Sane to tell him what happened back there while Sane closes the door. Leo adjusts his collar. Sane explains that a servant suddenly came to pick up Myra's friend, who seems to be Count Kurt's illegitimate child. Sane states that some of the Count's people might recognize them, so he decided they should hide before there was a fuss. Leo responds with understanding. Leo rests his chin on his hand and thinks that Mira and Spica seem like good friends, wondering if Spica is okay with being separated so suddenly. A knock sounds at the door as Sane states that they should ask the person outside how the friend might fare. Izaro knocks on the door and says he brought fresh sheets. Sane opens the door and invites him inside. Izaro places his hand on his chest and greets Leo, saying it has been a long time. Izaro apologizes for the late greeting and notes that he was surprised to see them enter through the back door. Leo replies that it does not matter. He adds that Izaro seems to get along well at the inn and with Mira. Izaro affirms that he does. Izaro notes that Mira is a caring girl, that they became friends quickly, and that her cooking is fantastic. Leo asks Izaro if he has been protecting Mira. Izaro confirms that he has, stating that it was what Leo and Sane hired him to do. An image shows Mira holding a tray as Izaro states that her culinary genius blossomed at 8 years old and that she has been rapidly inventing new recipes for the past 2 years. Izaro explains that burglars try to steal the inn's recipes, but he caught them all, adding that they never guessed the recipes came from Mira rather than the innkeeper. Leo rests his chin on his hands and thinks that his uncle was right to worry, as talented people are targets for troublemakers. Sane states that his grace was prescient to dispatch Izaro after merely hearing their tale of the udon. A man's back is shown as Leo holds his chin and notes that his uncle invented udon, so hearing about it probably piqued his interest. Leo sits on the bed and asks Izaro how Mira is doing now, noting that her friend is going to be taken to the capital. Izaro responds that it came as a shock, but she seems to have settled down. Izaro adds that Myra is spending time with Spica in her room. A hand knocks on the door as Sane, Leo, and Izaro look toward it in reaction. Sane, Leo are surprised, thinking that nobody but Izaro would come to the room while Mira knocks on the door and introduces herself. Mira holds a tray with a teapot and cake, thinking she will knock once more and return later if they are resting or out. Leo opens the door and calls Myra's name, startling her as she holds the tray. He then asks Mira what brought her here, while Sane calls out Leo's name and Izaro says oops behind him. Izaro tells the others that the sheets are there and to call for him if they need anything else. Mira holds a tray with tea and cake, thinking that Izaro came to change the sheets, while Regulus asks if everything is okay. She explains that she did not get to serve them milk crepes earlier despite their help, so she thought they might like some. Leo takes the tray and thanks Mira, who notices his silver hair, blue-purple eyes, and tailored clothes. Leo calls Myra's name as she realizes she never saw him without his hood before and wonders if he was actually incredibly handsome. Sane asks what is keeping them out in the hallway as Leo turns to him with the tray. Sane greets Mira, who reacts in confusion. Mira holds her chin and compares their features, thinking that Sane's black hair and blue-purple eyes look different from Leo's silver hair and azure eyes. Leo tells Sane that Mira brought the dessert they missed out on, and Sane calls it a stroke of luck, while Mira thinks they have the exact same reaction. Mira tells them she hopes they enjoy it and returns to her room with milk crepes for Spica, only to find Spica fast asleep on the bed. She pulls a blanket over Spica, thinking that Spica is tired from working hard in the day and crying in the evening, so she'll give her the milk crepes after she wakes up. Mira walks down the stairs with her tray and asks Kafir and Izaru if they were talking. Kafir turns around giving a positive response and asks where Spica is. Mira explains that Spica got tired crying and fell asleep, prompting Kafir to state that they need to talk. Kafir leads Mira into a room where Martha sits holding her face, leading Mira to ask what is wrong. Martha gasps and calls out Myra's name as she sits on the sofa. Martha hugs Mira tight while crying, causing Mira to question her, while Kafir addresses her and Martha speaks back to him. Kafir asks Mira if she wanted to visit the capital and port town for her cooking, and Mira confirms that she does. Kafir explains that a friend in the capital heard about Myra's cooking and wants her to move there, while Martha holds Mira tightly. Kafir asks Mira if she will go to the capital, while Mira thinks about whether she should leave her parents and village for cooking, even though she thought she would live here her whole life. Our protagonist looks at Kafir and states that this is her chance of a lifetime and that she wants to go. Images show food and a view of the capital town square as Mira states that she wants to learn everything she can and make all kinds of delicious dishes. Martha calls out to Mira and hugs her, while Mira addresses her mom. Martha wipes a tear and says that Mira is Kafir's child because they are both cooking addicts, and Mira agrees while crying. Kafir pats Mira on the head and states that it is decided and she will leave tomorrow, leaving Mira confused. A shout rings out over the inn at night. Spica looks down at a piece of French toast on a plate and notes that it is decided that Mira is going to the capital as well. Spica and Mira stand together in the kitchen by the hearth, noting that they will be living separately. Spica states that she is glad and finds it encouraging that Mira will be in the capital, while Mira agrees as both girls hold frying pans. 2 pieces of French toast sizzle in a pan. Spica states that the French toast turned out golden and perfect thanks to Mira, while Mira tells Spica that she did great and states that they will meet again. Mira and Spica invite Kafir and Martha to try the French toast and milk crepes they made. Kafir compliments Spica's improved skills while Martha claps her hands. The family sits at the dining table eating together, while Spica compliments both dishes and Kafir notes that the lemon makes the milk crepes refreshing. Mira and Spica lie on the bed together at night, recalling how they shared all the information they had on that night. Mira asks Spica for their password for the capital, and Spica replies to beware of lace majesty and getting wrecked. Sunlight shines through the window as morning comes, while the girls talk with bags under their eyes. Spica and Mira smile together as she states that they leave today for the capital. Spica turns back while stepping into the carriage, holding her luggage and saying goodbye to Mira. Mira waves her hand and tells Spica she will see her in the capital, while Martha places a hand on Myra's shoulder as Spica's carriage drives away. Martha turns to Mira and tells her it is now her turn to depart, warning her not to forget anything. Leo stands wearing his hood while Sane loads luggage onto the carriage, as Martha mentions that the brothers are letting Mira ride back to the capital with them. Mira, Martha, Leo, and Sane gather around the carriage loading supplies, while Kafir and Izaru talk nearby. Kafir thanks Izaru, asking him to look after Mira in the capital and to send his regards. Izaru agrees. Mira and Izaru look out the window as the window shuts, with Mira telling Kafir and Martha to take care of themselves. Mira notes that her journey has begun. Sane asks Mira if she feels okay. Leo offers her a break if she is tired, and Izaru offers her a snack. Mira raises her hands, stating she is fine while finding their handsome appearances overwhelming. She rubs her eyes and says that the carriage is so comfortable. She slides down and falls asleep. Sane and Leo sit on a seat while watching Mira sleep on the couch across from them with Izaru sitting nearby. Leo notes that Mira returning with them is a surprise. Sane tells Leo that he is lucky, prompting Leo to blush in embarrassment. Sane states that living in the capital means they cannot hide their status forever, and Leo agrees. Mira notes that they stayed at several inns during an uneventful journey, while Mira yawns and shares snacks with Leo inside the carriage. Leo points out the window to show Mira the capital, and Mira gasps as they arrive. Our heroine looks out the window at the busy city and market stalls, stating that it is huge and filled with things she has never seen before. She asks if the person she will stay with works in hospitality, and Izaru replies that it is a surprise for when they arrive. Leo states that they have arrived, and Sane tells Mira and Izaru they will get off here and to use the carriage as they wish. Sane tells Leo to come along, and Mira thanks Leo for everything, wishing him well. Leo turns around while getting off the carriage and calls out Myra's name, causing her to jump. He states that he will explain everything the next time they meet, and Mira replies goodbye as he leaves. She looks out from behind a closing curtain inside the carriage while Izaru sits beside her. Our girl thinks back to Sane and Leo eating food and realizes that she will meet them again if she continues serving food because they are foodies. Mira asks Izaru if he will return to the Stardust Inn, and Izaru explains that his family lives in the capital and that he plans to stay for a while because he is worried about her. Izaru adds that his employer told him to give Mira priority, leaving her wondering if he means her dad, before Izaru notices that they are almost there. Mira clasps her hands together, feeling nervous, and wonders what the place will be like and whether most of the customers will be laborers. She clasps her hands, takes a deep breath, and reassures herself that she will be okay as long as she can cook, right as someone announces their arrival. Mira and Izaru stand outside a large mansion with a fountain and garden. She holds her suitcase in shock and wonders if the location is not an eatery. Izaru strides forward saying he should go say hello, while Mira calls out for him to wait. She raises her hand and tells Izaru that he cannot just act like he owns the place. Staff bow and welcome the honored guests as Mira clutches Izaru's arm, stating this cannot be the right place, while Izaru nervously asks her to let go. Isekai'd observes that she is Kaphir's daughter and notes her special qualities. He introduces himself as Isekai'd Butridge, welcoming Mira to the capital and the ducal house while referencing her culinary talents. Izaru kneels before Isekai'd and greets him, while Mira looks on in confusion. Mira frets in shock after realizing Isekai'd is a duke. Isekai'd tells Izaru and Mira that they may rise, while Mira realizes her father's friend is a duke. He states that he owes Kaphir a debt and asks to take care of Mira, ordering a maid to show Mira to her room. The maid introduces Mira to a room filled with fancy furniture and dresses. She grabs Mira to change her clothes, while Mira wonders what is going on. Mira asks if the fancy dress is too fine for her, and the maid explains that these are her ladyship's old clothes. Our protagonist thinks that the Duke must have a daughter older than her, as the maid urges her to come along because the others are waiting. Izaru compliments Mira's new outfit, and she thanks him while the maid looks on. Izaru asks Mira if she wants to know how the Duke knows her father, and she confirms that she does. Mira notes that her father never spoke much about himself, and that she did not understand what the Duke meant about a debt. Izaru offers to explain from the beginning, noting that the Duke's name is Isekai'd Butridge, and that his domain is the largest in the kingdom. Izaru explains their royal family relations to Mira, stating that the Duke is the king's younger brother. Mira trembles, realizing the Duke is very important, while Izaru points out that her father Kaphir is involved in the story. Izaru states that Kaphir was a royal guard, making Mira shout in shock that her father was a knight. He explains that Kaphir left the capital after a false accusation during a succession crisis, and even though his innocence was proven later, he quit being a knight to choose his own path. Izaru says the Duke always wanted to make up for what happened, while Mira remembers hearing a similar story recently and thinks of the names Isekai'd but rich. She remembers that the Duke is a hidden character and love interest in the Otome game who was poisoned during the succession crisis. Mira thinks about how the Duke looks healthy despite what Spica said and wonders if he is a widower since he has a daughter. Izara knocks on a door and tells Mira she can hear the rest of the story from the Duke himself. Isekai'd invites Mira and Izara to sit down, apologizes for the hand-me-down dress, and says it suits her well, prompting Mira to thank him. Mira tells Isekai'd that she does not wish for grand things and only wants to see customers enjoy her food. She would like to work in a low-town eatery like an inn that is busy and bustling. Isekai'd laughs and says Kafir always told him about tasty places in the low town, noting that Kafir and Mira are alike. He agrees to her request as Mira smiles with her hands clasped together. Isekai'd asks with a shy face that Mira if she could make him some egg udon. He states that udon is one of his favorites and that he would love to try it, and Mira agrees. Isekai'd holds a bowl of egg udon while eating at the table with Mira and Izara. Isekai'd observes the egg udon, remarking that it is interesting. Mira explains that egg udon is popular at her family's inn, and Izara adds that there are many more dishes he can recommend. Myra's first day in the capital defied her expectations, but she will keep making the dishes she loves in her own way. Mira thinks that she hopes she can tell Spica all about it soon. Meanwhile, somewhere as a large estate building is shown, a person says she can't wait. She states that it is nice to be back in the capital and that she cannot wait to see Leo and the others while she chuckles. Mira notes that 1 week has passed since Mira moved into the mansion. She holds her hands together in the kitchen and thinks that the kitchen looks wonderful every time she sees it. She notices many modern ovens. Mira states that she is set to start work at a low-town restaurant next week. She adds that in her free time, she can cook whatever she likes at the Duke's mansion. Our girl stands by a shelf filled with jars and utensils, thinking that there are too many options to choose from. Someone calls out to Mira and asks what she'll make today. Mira turns around to look at the speaker. Mira greets Surma and Fina. Mira explains that Surma is her senior in the kitchen, while Fina is her neighbor in the servants' quarters. Fina winks and notes that Mira is early as usual. Mira explains that she could not relax because the mansion was so big, so she moved into the servants' quarters. Fina and Surma welcome Mira at the door, making her feel at home because they are from her homeland. Mira holds up an apple and says the head chef gave her apples today, so she'll make an apple pie. Someone nearby asks if apple pie is a dessert. Surma and Fina ask if apple pie is another homeland specialty. Mira answers that it is, while thinking to herself that it is not entirely untrue since she is from Japan. Mira peels and cuts the apples, explaining that she will simmer them with sugar and lemon juice to make the filling. Surma peels the produce nearby and notes that Mira works fast. Surma peels the produce and says he has never made desserts before. Mira asks if he really has not. As Mira cuts butter into cubes, she thinks she expected Surma to be experienced due to the abundance of confectioner's utensils and butter in the kitchen. Surma explains that the Duchess loves sweets, so all the pastry chefs undergo grueling training. Mira mixes butter cubes into flour and reacts in shock to Surma's statement. Mira holds her face in shock and thinks about Spica saying the Duke is another love interest. Mira questions the game having a duchess and daughter, wondering what kind of Otome game allows adultery and setting the difficulty too high. She holds a bowl and wonders what is up with the game. Surma holds a bowl of apples, asks Mira what she is doing, and begins to speak. She explains that she is making the pie pastry by rubbing butter into flour, adding cold water, forming a lump, and letting it rest. She adds that while it rests, she will finish the filling in the pot. Fina pushes a tea cart while Surma asks Mira if she trained in a bakery because she works efficiently. Mira explains that her parents run an inn, so she picked up the skills. Surma responds that he thought Mira was a genius. Annabelle opens the door and demands to know where the new chef hired by her father is. The girl stares ahead. Mira and Surma jump in surprise. Annabelle steps forward and reaches out to Mira, stating that it must be her. She explains that she heard Mira was a brilliant cook and came to say hello. Mira looks back in surprise. Annabelle introduces herself as Annabelle Buttridge and asks for Myra's name. Mira introduces herself and thinks that the Duke's daughter seems friendlier than she imagined. Lena stands nearby looking on. Annabelle states that it is a pleasure to meet Mira and that she cannot wait to try her cooking. Lena stands behind her. Mira chuckles and says it is an honor, while thinking that Annabelle is bright and cheerful, almost like Spica. Mira gestures to Annabelle and explains that this is a busy kitchen with a slippery floor, suggesting she try not to run. Fina gasps and calls out Myra's name. Surma tells Mira to watch her mouth. Annabelle stands speechless, while Lena gasps behind her. Everyone in the kitchen stands in silence. Mira realizes her mistake and reacts with concern. Mira remembers telling Spica to be careful of Lace Majesty, but realizes she has now spoken back to a refined lady herself and worries about punishment. Annabelle giggles nearby. Annabelle agrees with Mira, saying hurting herself would inconvenience the chefs. Mira looks on in surprise while Lena stands behind Annabelle. Lena touches her glasses and tells Annabelle she is too tomboyish, adding that she must not inconvenience others. Annabelle agrees, while Mira watches them silently. Lena thanks Mira for warning Annabelle, but notes that advice may backfire depending on circumstances, telling her to tread carefully. Mira responds that she understands. Lena winks and wags her finger, stating that Annabelle is a wild little girl and telling Mira to tell her off whenever she deserves it. Annabelle pouts nearby and calls Lena mean. Mira rests her hand on her chest, thinking that Annabelle is kind. She notes that there are many high-ranking nobles in the capital. Our girl holds a pot handle and thinks that she needs to be more aware and tread carefully from now on. Surma points at the pot and calls out Myra's name. Surma asks if the pan is okay, and Mira thanks him for the warning. Annabelle smells the aroma, notes that it smells good, and asks what Mira is making. Mira points up and states that she is making apple pie. Annabelle points back and asks if she means the pie made with apples inside a hard crust. Mira looks back at her. Our girl states that the pie is crisp. Annabelle questions if pie is not really tough. Fina, Lena, and Surma nod in agreement. Mira rests her finger on her chin, thinking that crisp pies may not have been invented in this world yet. The pies used to serve as containers or lunchboxes, and edible pie appeared in the 16th to 17th centuries. Mira explains that her method gives a crisp pie crust. Annabelle and Lena watch as Mira cooks, expressing excitement. Annabelle suggests having a tea party later, and a maid agrees. A hand places a plate with a slice of apple pie on the table. Lena gasps as Annabelle sits at the table, holds a fork, and questions if this is apple pie. Mira presents the pie while standing beside the table. Annabelle cuts into the pie with a fork and notes that it really is crisp. She eats a piece of the pie and states that it is absolutely delicious. Lena holds the plate of pie, blushes, and states that the netting work is beautiful. Annabelle eats her slice and adds that it is not tough and that the apple's sweet tartness lingers delightfully, telling Lena she must try it. Mira says she is glad Annabelle liked it and points out that there are many other possible fillings like meat or fish besides apple. Annabelle and Lena react, stating that the very mention is mouth-watering, as Annabelle claps her hands together. Annabelle clasps her hands together and says they will hold a tea party at home next month, asking Mira to make this delicious pie for it. Mira holds a teapot and looks back in surprise. Annabelle says she will ask her father to arrange it, so everyone will be astonished. Mira raises her hand and thinks that baking for a Duke's tea party is a huge responsibility. A hand holds a quill pen writing a letter to Spica, asking how she is doing and if she has settled down since moving to the capital. Mira notes that she is staying at her father's friend's house. Below, Martha and Kaffir stand together. Outside, the large mansion is visible. Mira explains that she is staying at Duke Buttridge's mansion, where everyone is kind and friendly. Lena, Surma, Fina, Annabelle, and Duke Sieghart Buttridge stand together. Mira writes her letter at a desk. She remembers Spica telling her that she was the heroine of an Otome game. She notes that Spica's confession unlocked her memories of her past life. A bowl of udon noodles appears near her thoughts. Leo smiles while wearing his hood. Mira thinks that without those past life memories, she would never have rediscovered the Japanese cuisine she loved. She stops writing her letter and realizes she should leave out the incident with Annabelle, so Spica does not worry. Mira explains that without those past memories, she would never have met so many people or come to the capital. Sane, Izaru, and Annabelle are shown. Annabelle, clasping her hands together, says pie and a tea party. Mira looks back. A hand uses a wax stamp to seal the letter. Mira tells Spica that she is now working at an eatery in the low town, inviting her to come eat sometime, and signing her name as Mira. She walks down a street in the low town wearing a beret and coat with a shoulder bag. She passes a maid delivering food at a window and walks by buildings. A shop bell rings as someone says good morning. A large pile of cabbages sits on a table. Mira reacts in surprise at the cabbages. She looks at the mountain of cabbages and wonders why there are so many. A woman asks if that is a lot or what. Mira looks up and reacts as she recognizes the person. She calls out Lita's name, and Lita, holding a cabbage, greets Mira back. Mira notes that Lita is the proprietress of the eatery Duke Sieghart introduced Mira to. Lita tells Duke Sieghart that he is looking old, while Sieghart notes that Lita looks as youthful as ever. Mira explains that the Duke knows Lita from eating at her shop as a boy, and that she is a beautiful lady who never seems to age. Lita pats a cabbage and explains that a trader friend dropped them off after ordering too many. She notes that they could turn them into sauerkraut before they spoil. She stands with her hands on her hips, noting that it might be hard to use all the cabbages. Mira stands beside her looking at crates packed full of cabbages. Mira holds her chin, thinking about what cabbage dishes eatery patrons like, before getting an idea. Lita looks over in surprise as Mira addresses her. Our girl holds her hand to her chest and asks Lita how about a recipe from her homeland. Lita looks at Mira while listening. A plate containing fried cutlets and shredded cabbage is placed on a table. Lita presents today's set meal for regular patrons. A customer holds a plate and asks what it is, wondering if it is meat. Lita holds a tray and explains that it is a minced cutlet set with cabbage. A seated customer looks down at the meal tray and questions what a minced cutlet is. The preparation steps show mincing meat, adding chopped onion and cabbage, mixing the ingredients in a bowl, forming patties, coating them in breadcrumbs, and frying them in a pot of hot oil until crispy. Lita stands near a table of customers, explaining that the dish is only for regular patrons today. One customer notes that it looks interesting. Lita asks them to try it and give feedback, adding that they will put it on the menu if it tastes good. She enters the room and tells Mira that she served the minced cutlet sets. Lita notices Mira's expression and asks if something is the matter. Mira gasps in response. Mira apologizes and says that she should not have been daydreaming while cooking. Lita tells Mira that it is fine and asks if something is on her mind. Our girl explains that her dishes might be unfamiliar to the people here. She adds that she is in charge of making dessert for the Duke's next tea party. She clasps her hands together and wonders what if they do not approve of her dish. Mira states that the thought made her dizzy, while Lita sighs. Lita places her hand on Mira's shoulder and begins to speak. Lita tells her that it is best to look at the patrons' faces. A customer cuts into the minced cutlet with a fork and knife, noting how crunchy and juicy it is. Customers eat the minced cutlets in the dining room. One customer notes that the cabbage's sweetness brings out the meat's flavor, while others ask to add the dish to the new menu. Lita points into the dining area, telling Mira that her cooking is a sure bet. Mira gasps while watching the patrons eat, noting that she has only been here for a few weeks. Annabelle stands in her dress. Mira thinks that she was worried it was too soon to cater for a duke, but realizes she may have worried too much. Mira smiles and resolves to do her best in her own way. Mira thinks that it will be fine since Annabelle liked her cooking too. A customer says thank you and leaves the eatery as the door closes. Lita says lunch is over and that they will put the sign outside and head into the city. Mira responds to Lita. Mira looks at the sacks of ingredients, noting that there are so many in the capital. Lita says that the trading house they're going to has the finest ingredients in the capital and hopes Mira likes it. Lita opens the door to Danmeyer and company and asks someone inside to tell Otto that she is here. Mira looks at a stall filled with lemons and touches one. Mira holds a lemon and thinks about her past memories of making lemon juice and milk crepes with Spica and the others. Mira calls out to Lita to look at the lemons. Otto from Dammeier and Company holds a paper and adjusts his monocle. He apologizes for keeping them waiting and asks Lita how the cabbages were, noting that he ordered too many. Lita crosses her arms and says that they dealt with the cabbages thanks to Mira. Otto laughs and says he is much obliged. Otto sips his tea and asks Mira what he can do for her. Mira asks Otto to pass a letter to Count Kurt's daughter, Spica, noting that Spica is a friend from her hometown. Otto looks at the sealed letter. Mira sits on the sofa and explains that she learned letters from commoners get thrown out before reaching nobles. A maid is shown sorting mail and throwing letters into a bin. Otto hums in response. Otto tells Mira that he has influence among the nobility and that taking her letter will ensure it gets delivered. An image shows coins, jewels, a dress, and a large mansion. He strikes his fist into his palm and says he will do it. Mira thanks Otto. Otto says he will be in touch. Mira agrees. Lita tells Otto to come eat cabbage. Outside, Mira thinks that it was kind of Otto to take her letter and hopes it arrives soon. Someone calls out to Mira from above. Mira and Lita glance around to look for the speaker. Izara waves from a window above and says it has been a while. Mira turns around in surprise and calls out Izara's name. Izara says to wait while he comes down. Mira and Lita look up toward the window as Izara steps away. He apologizes for not visiting the Duke's house, explaining that he has been busy since returning home. Mira says it is okay because everyone is kind. Izara tells her to let him know if she ever needs anything. A voice calls out to Izaru, addressing him as brother. Merak asks who the girl is. Mira looks over in reaction. Izaru addresses Merak and introduces Mira as a great little chef. Lita and Mira listen nearby. He introduces Merak as his brother. Otto, Izaru, and Merak stand together. Mira thinks that they are all alike. Merak presents himself and states that he is Merak, the heir to this trading house. He holds Mira's hands and mentions that he is still only 10 years old, to which Mira notes that they are the same age. Below, Mira reacts in confusion and questions the name Merak. Mira remembers Spica telling her about a puppy-type love interest named Merak Dammeier. She asks Lita what this trading house is called. Lita answers that it is Dammeier and Company. Mira stands in shock and realizes that Merak is one of the love interests. Merak tilts his head, touches his face, and asks Mira if something is wrong. Mira panics, noting to Spica that this is an emergency and thinking that Merak uses cuteness as a weapon. Mira shakes her head and replies that it is nothing. Merak asks if she is sure. Mira thinks that the main story starts at the academy and that as a mob character, it has nothing to do with her. Guests wearing fancy dresses gather around tables with tea sets and baked goods near a fountain in a garden. Leo rests his cheek on his hand while holding an open book near a window. He sighs and thinks that a tea party is a bore. Leaves blow across the view of a large building while a voice calls out to Spica. Arcturus finds Spica and asks her what is wrong. Spica sniffs and addresses him as her brother. Spica sits at a desk holding a quill next to an open notebook. A tutor scolds Spica for failing to solve a question and compares her to her brother. Spica apologizes and asks in a letter how Mira is doing. Spica notes that it was a long journey after they parted, as Spica looks out the carriage window. Count Kurt greets Spica as she steps out of the carriage in the capital and pats her on the head. He hugs Spica and introduces Arcturus as her brother. Arcturus approaches Spica and asks if her tutor said something to her, and Spica replies that she did. Spica fidgets while mentioning her struggle with her studies. Arcturus crouches beside Spica and tells her that she is doing her best. Spica explains that Arcturus was adopted by Count Kurt, so they are not blood relatives. She describes Arcturus as having platinum blonde hair, blue eyes, and intelligence that led to a recommendation as the prince's classmate. Spica stands quietly as she is compared to Arcturus every day. Spica writes with a quill, practices embroidery, and studies reading, writing, etiquette, and dance with sister and Mira. Arcturus listens as Spica explains that she wants to return to her previous life, while the tutor complains about country bumpkins. Spica gasps and clarifies that she did not mean it that way. Arcturus holds his chin while Spica states that she loves being with him and her father. He states that the tutor has to go, leaving Spica confused. Arcturus then reaches into his pocket and tells Spica that he brought something to cheer her up. He hands a sealed letter to Spica. Spica looks at the letter and wonders who sent it. Arcturus explains that a merchant brought a letter for Spica. Spica holds the letter and recognizes Myra's handwriting. Arcturus asks if the sender is her dear friend. She reads the letter aloud. Myra writes that she is staying at the Duke's mansion and working at an eatery in the low town, inviting Spica to visit. Spica thanks Myra in her thoughts and asks Arcturus if the merchant is still there. Arcturus confirms that their father is ordering supplies and dresses. Spica states that she wants to buy letter paper and resolves to do her best. A teacup rests on a table while guests chatter outside the palace. Regulus sighs as people thank him for coming to the palace. Regulus walks down a hallway and wonders how his brother can stand being in that situation. He walks forward and thinks that studying is one thing, but dealing with peeresses is onerous. Sane holds up 2 fingers and reminds Master Regulus that studying hard and attending tea parties were the conditions he accepted for visiting that town. Regulus remembers that those were the conditions set by his father and mother. A hand points out that a royal needs a guard when traveling. The king and queen sit at a table and state that personal travel cannot be approved lightly, but they will assent if he accepts their conditions and does as they bid. Regulus thinks of Myra smiling. Regulus thinks that now is the time to gain their trust. Sane addresses Regulus as Your Highness. He complains that the peeress's zeal is overwhelming. Sane admits that they are serious. Regulus acknowledges that those girls have family honor to uphold. He remembers Myra presenting food. Myra offers plenty of food while Regulus remembers how kindly she smiles. Regulus clenches his fist and wishes Myra were here. Sane sighs while standing behind Regulus. Sane points his finger and asks if Regulus saw Izaru's report. He states that Myra has been creating new dishes at the Duke's mansion and the Lowtown eatery, astonishing everyone. Regulus complains about the minced cutlets and wants to try them. Izaru reads his paper and notes that he is fact-finding and does not eat Myra's cooking every day anymore. Sane states that they all share the same feeling of shame. Regulus lets out a sigh. Regulus walks near the garden where people chatter. He wonders when he will ever be able to see Myra again. He wonders if Myra has forgotten about him. Sane addresses Regulus and mentions that next week's tea party will be at Annabelle's place in the Duke's mansion, surprising Regulus. Sane confirms that Myra is in charge of dessert. Regulus asks if that is true, and Sane tells him to endure his studies and tea parties until then, to which Regulus agrees. Regulus calls Sane's name and asks if he can arrange time for him to be alone with Myra at the Duke's place. Sane looks back in response. Sane asks Regulus what he plans to do. Regulus states that he wants to tell Myra he is a prince of this kingdom, remembering that he could not say it on that day. He acknowledges the risk that Myra might reject him, but states that he still wants to move things forward. Sane listens in surprise. Sane places his hand on his chest and agrees to Regulus's request. Sane asks Regulus to be a gentleman at today's tea party. Regulus asks if Sane is enjoying this. A dish rests on a plate. Izaru and Merak look at the dish, while Myra smiles. They state that the planned menu item is called okonomiyaki. Izaru notes that it is lucky that Merak wanted to drop by to taste Myra's cooking. Merak asks if the dish contains cabbage. Myra confirms that the ingredients include finely chopped cabbage, eggs, flour, herbs, grated yam, and meat udon broth. The steps show mixing the ingredients to make a batter, adding soy sauce, frying until golden, and drizzling more soy sauce for extra flavor. Myra holds her chin near the okonomiyaki and states that she wants proper okonomiyaki sauce because she is unsure about the recipe. Merak questions the word sauce. Our girl explains that she cannot get the right spices in this country because she has no connections. Izaru and Merak listen to her. Merak and Izaru raise their hands and ask Myra why she did not tell them earlier. Myra looks back in surprise while holding a plate. Merak states that they have contacts that can get foreign spices. Mira asks if that is true. Izuru notes that he is curious about how the okonomiyaki is fried and praises Mira's skill with fried dishes. Mira remembers how fun the harvest festival was while watching Izuru grill skewers. She remembers Leo eating a skewer while Sane stands behind him, wondering how they are doing and noting that she has not seen them since then. Izuru eats with a fork and states that seeing them might be sooner than she thinks. Mira looks at him in confusion. Mira states that she just remembered something and asks Izuru and Merak to try a dessert she made. Izuru and Merak look back as desserts rest on the table. She explains that she wants to serve a lemon pie at the tea party and seeks a male opinion on its sweetness. Izuru considers it a perk, while Mira remembers what Leo said in the carriage. Leo sits in the carriage, noting the interesting combination in the mill crepes. Mira asks if he dislikes lemon jam, and Regulus clarifies that he does, describing the lemon as refreshing and the cream as soft and airy. Mira remembers Leo calling the food delicious and thinks that he liked the lemon. Leo places his hand on his chest. Mira resolves to do her best at the Duke's tea party. Annabelle welcomes the guests to the House Buttridge tea party. Guests gather around tables in the garden near a fountain. Guests look at the baked goods on the table and ask Annabelle what the food is. Plates display pastries, tartlets, and pies. Annabelle holds a teacup and explains that the confection is called a pie. A guest asks if pie is that hard food. Annabelle replies that this pie is crisp and goes well with tea. Annabelle states that their chef worked hard to make the pie for today. Narration notes that earlier that morning, Dominic carried a dish inside the mansion. Dominic points to the dough and asks Mira if the pie pastry turned out as she wanted. Mira confirms it and states that Dominic and Surma did a wonderful job. Surma sighs in relief. Surma states that there were more steps than before and that it was really tough. Mira explains that she wanted to make puff pastry. She describes folding the pastry and butter multiple times while resting it in an ice house, so thin layers form to make a crispy, flaky pie. Dominic notes that though they're using the same ingredients, this method gives different results. Mira explains that Dominic has a passion for culinary research, is in charge of desserts at the Duke's mansion, and is helping her today. Surma, Mira, and Dominic raise their fists and cheer, agreeing to make one last effort. Surma and Dominic say the food is all done and praise their work. Fina opens the door and announces that the guests are here. Surma pats Mira's back and says they will leave the rest to Fina and the others. Fina looks on as Mira reacts to the pat. Fina holds a tea cart loaded with pies and pastries. Surma tells Mira that her dishes are the best and to be confident. Mira thanks Surma and suggests secretly watching how the guests react. Annabelle laughs with a guest at the table near a cup of tea and a plate of pastries. Surma and Mira look out through a window from inside the building. Mira points out the window while standing next to Surma. Surma states that the guests seem to love it all. Annabelle and a guest sit at a table set with teacups and a tier dessert stand. Mira states that Annabelle is having a great time, too. Surma stretches his arms and asks Mira what she'll do now, adding that he is going back to the kitchen. Mira answers that she will take a rest. She smiles and says she is a bit tired, so she'll have a rest. A person steps into a room. Annabelle turns around at the tea table and reacts as someone approaches. Outside, Mira stretches her arms in the open air. Mira sits on the grass under a tree, sighs, and states that all the early morning preparation tired her out. She flops onto the grass, looks at the sky, and notes the beautiful weather while acknowledging that lying down is bad manners. Mira lies on the grass and notes that Annabelle looked happy, thinking that no one will mind if it is just for today. Annabelle sits at the tea table laughing with a guest. Our girl lies on the grass with her hands resting on her chest and chuckles, noting that it was all worth it. Mira closes her eyes, stating that she feels sleepy now that her worries are gone, and wonders if taking a small nap is fine. A person walks toward her as she sleeps on the ground. She opens her eyes, turns around, and calls out Leo's name. Leo sits beside her and confirms his identity. She asks Leo what he is doing here. Leo touches his cheek and explains that he was invited to the party. He adds that he thought Mira would be there, but she was not, so he came looking for her. Leo smiles, greets Mira, and notes that it has been a while. Mira thinks back to Annabelle saying it was her first tea party in a while. Mira mentions that Annabelle only invited friends and family. Leo smiles and pauses before mentioning Annabelle. Leo states that Annabelle is his cousin. Mira looks back in surprise. Leo states that he is the second prince of the kingdom. Leaves fall around Leo and Mira as they sit on the grass. Leo apologizes for not telling Mira sooner and raises his fist, stating that he wants her to know. Leaves blow past Mira as she looks at Leo. Mira looks down and realizes that Leo is a prince of the kingdom. Mira thinks back to Leo's fine clothing. She remembers touching Leo's face without permission, asking him to carry a basket, and traveling with him to the capital. She realizes that countless discourtesies come to mind. Mira clutches her clothes in shock and wonders if she is guilty of lèse majesty. Our heroine asks Leo if he is a prince. Leo confirms that he is, then asks if she is angry that he did not tell her earlier. Mira states that she is not angry. Mira asks Leo if she is going to be executed. She trembles and states that she has been discourteous to a prince in her village. Leo blinks in response. She asks Leo to at least spare her parents. Leo laughs and says it is all fine. Then he asks Mira to call him Leo, like always, and not stand during the ceremony. Mira thinks that her parents are safe. She holds her shirt and addresses Leo as Your Highness. Leo hesitates and stammers that he considers Mira something to him. He raises his fist, blushes, and shouts that he considers her a friend. Mira repeats the word friend. Leo blushes and agrees. Leo asks Mira if she does not want to be friends. She looks at Leo and thinks that he keeps turning red and then pale. Mira agrees and thinks that prince or not, he is still the same expressive and kind Leo she knows. Leo looks at Mira. Mira says that if he does not mind, then they should be friends. Mira smiles and tells Leo not to get mad about it later. Leo laughs and promises that he will not. She asks Leo if he tried the pie. Leo confirms that he did and notes that Annabelle was showing the pies off to everyone. Leo smiles and states that he liked the lemon pie best because the refreshing lemon reminded him of the village. Mira smiles while holding her collar. He asks if Mira was in charge of the lemon pies, and she confirms that she was. Mira asks about Sane, and Leo clarifies that Sane is his guardian knight. Mira realizes she had it wrong as they sit under the tree together. Mira notes that they talked at length until Sane came for Leo. Someone calls out Myra's name as night falls over the mansion. Annabelle grabs Myra's shoulders and thanks her, stating that everyone was delighted and that the food was crisp and delicious. She adds that she has never had a tea party so well received. Mira clasps her hands and says she is glad. Annabelle explains that she lives on the estate and was worried about what to talk about, but states that she was fine thanks to Mira. Annabelle says goodbye and runs off to thank the others. Mira gestures with her hand and thinks that she is glad she could help Annabelle, noting that it reminded her of something. She grins and thinks that when her cooking makes people smile, it makes her glad. She resolves to do her best tomorrow, adding that she will take a bath and go to bed first. Mira turns the door handle, sees Fina carrying a tray. Fina calls out to Mira and says it is great timing. Our girl looks back in surprise as Fina holds the door open and asks if something is wrong. Fina presents a tray of leftover pastries, explaining that Surma gave them to her because they could not be served. Fina suggests eating them together. Mira asks if it is really okay to eat them. Fina points out that they do not get this chance every day and asks if they can eat in Myra's room. Mira agrees. Fina thanks Mira, opens the door, and says she wanted to have a good, long talk with her.